Okay. Okay, so I'm going to give a short introduction to Flutter tonight. Just some caveats before I start is that Flutter is still kind of in beta. It was officially released version 1 in December, and it's still, there was stuff that was broken last month when I was working on this, and now it works, so they've been updating it. I have not used React Native or done really any Android development. I've read some of the docs, so some of the stuff might be similar, some of it might not, but I don't know a lot about that side, so this talk is mostly going to be about Flutter. Yeah, and it might be familiar to some people or not. I don't really know. Okay, yeah, so I'll go ahead and get started. So what is Flutter? So it is a new cross-platform application framework written by Google. It is supposed to run on Android, iOS, and potentially the web. They're exploring that. There were some talks at Strange Loop that were some of the guys that were working on it. As of right now, Google is supposedly coming out with a new operating system codenamed Fuchsia, which there has been, I think you can get code for it and build, and there's some repos out there. And right now, the only apps that will run on it are apps that are built with Flutter, and that's kind of why maybe some people know about it. That's the only reason I had heard about it, is that people were messing around with this Fuchsia dev build that got released that doesn't really do anything. So like I said, the V1 release was in December. They're up to like 1.2 now. Yeah.
Where does Fuchsia run?
I think it runs on Android devices, but I don't know. I've never looked at the alpha build or whatever that they have out there running.
Is Fuchsia like an app that runs on Android?
So I have, let's see, we brought this up. It's a new operating system that is written in C, C++, Go, and Rust, and it's not supposedly supposed to use Android. Like, they're trying to get away from Java, I think. And I looked at this earlier, and it's interesting that they're pushing Flutter, or supposedly pushing Flutter, and that they have Swift support in Fuchsia. And I went and looked at some of the repos, and you can see the Swift compiler, like the LLVM packages in the repos. So, yeah, I don't know. It was mentioned in here somewhere, but yeah. Let me go back to this. Okay. So its supposed benefits are that it's backed by Google, right? It's written by Google engineers. It's cross-platform. It's supposed to have native performance. I think they're trying to compete against React Native, and they're saying that it's going to be faster and more performant. Maybe not as much as if you had written straight Android or straight Swift, but it's going to be fast and quick to develop. It has Vulkan support for high frame rates on certain devices. It supports hot reload, and then the caveat is that it's written in Dart. So let's see. Okay, so Dart is this programming language that was developed by Google, and released in 2011. I don't remember when it might have come out in like 2010 in I/O. I remember going to talk. They pushed it kind of as the replacement. They said JavaScript kind of sucks. It's like ungainly. So we're going to come out with this new code that you're going to write, and they were going to put a VM inside Chrome, and they were trying to push all the other browser vendors to implement Dart so that would be like the new platform of the web. And that obviously never happened. And so I guess they have still been working on it kind of in the periphery. So it's object-oriented, it has classes, it's garbage collected, it's statically typed. They say C-like syntax, and the big one is that it compiles to x86 and ARM, and also they have a JavaScript transpile. They'll do Dart2.js, and I think they do WebAssembly now. And so if you've used TypeScript, it looks a lot like TypeScript. So I would probably compare it to that more than maybe some other languages. And then now for like tooling support, I don't know all the plugins, but the big ones are obviously the Android Studio supports Flutter. Visual Studio Code has a pretty nice plugin. IntelliJ, which is what Android Studio is, has a plugin. And they have some web tools that they're supposedly releasing that let you do, like you can see the rendering times of certain frames and stuff, but it's too new. I really haven't messed with it. So, okay, so into Flutter. So they use this, they call everything a widget. So kind of like if you're writing a component in a current web app. So this is what like a class in Flutter would look at like, and every single one of these things, columns, layout, styling, everything is just it compiles to a widget. And what they're doing is you write these widgets in Dart, and in the background it's compiling like a very large, like you just see a column or a table, but under the hood it's making like, you know, a whole tree of items to kind of do that. And you can write your own widgets as plugins. Yeah, so this is just like this is just to show you what a basic one looks like. And then you'll notice here they have this stateless widget, so similar to React, and I haven't used Vue, that have like a set state method. They have state transitions built in, and same kind of thing, right? They have like a set state, did update config, a dispose is very similar. You've seen this before if you do any modern web development, and this is built into language. And then this is their like caveat why they think it's better than React Native. And so what they say is that what happens is Flutter is kind of run on top. If you compared it to an Android jar where everything is packaged and run as a single app, this one is kind of like it's run on top of the app, and it renders the widget tree into native components, whether they're iOS or Android components. And they say that React Native is slower because React has its own state, and then the platform has a state, and then there's the canvas render. So that's their like why it's quicker, because there's less. They're closer to the metal. Okay, yeah. So I'll show. That's probably the biggest thing to talk about. I'll show a demo. I built the. So this is the. Let me run this really quick. So, yeah. Thank you. So I built, this is just a demo app that they had in their tutorial just to kind of show you. I'll walk through it and I'll show you what it looks like in the, if this launches at some point. It takes a little while to build the first time because it's kind of running Java. There's a jar under the hood. And it's much faster if you develop it on your phone. It looks kind of janky here, but they are pretty smooth. So they have this like infinite scroll list, and then you can like these. It's just like random words, and then you can hit like they have the little hamburger menu, and you can see what saved suggestions you have made. So this will look similar. So I'll kind of go through it. So let me. I'll make the font real big. So it kind of looks like any other, I guess like a modern web app. They let you do imports. They have a package. They manage their own packages that are on like this. There's a Flutter package repo. And so some of these are written by Google, and some of them are written by other people. And by default, they have the default material design package, which is for Android. And they have the Cupertino Dart package if you were compiling this for iOS. And then in this one, we're using this English words. And it has a void main, kind of like Java, that is going to run the app. And then they have this like, this stateless widget thing is really weird. You have to subclass stateless widget, and then you have to make the state a separate class. So the state is separate from this kind of stateless wrapper that doesn't really do anything. I don't really know why. And this will look kind of familiar. Like in here, we're making some word pairs, and we store them in this list. And then, let me go back down. And so what gets happen is a row gets built, and all of this is like, this returns a widget that's the title. It does like Pascal case, and then they have like, oh, when you tap on it, set the state, right? And then the state change happens, it re-renders the entire tree. And similar to React, it's not called render. They have a build. It's called build. It's a build method. And so let me try to find it. They have this like build row is basically that. In this case, it's build row, but there was like there's this main build method. And so all of the widgets have an internal build method, and that's the same thing as a render, and they either return a widget. I think they return a widget as part of their process, just like in React, where you would return a DOM node. And so here they're returning like a material app, and it has a title, and I can show you, let's see, I don't know if it's the same one. That might not be the right title. Maybe this one. Yeah, it's trying to hot reload. I don't know. It usually works pretty well. So, yeah, I don't know.
So I see all the class definitions and stuff, but what actually ties it all together? Like the main method calls my.
So the main method calls run app, and then it calls my app, and then my app is the main widget, and then it builds this material app, which uses this random words, which is actually this state. It's not this state. It's this. It's one of these down here. It's this stateful widget. They have this stateful widget that all it is a wrapper, and then it has to. This is the one I'm thinking about. It has to create state, and it initializes the actual like stateful widget, which is this thing that extends the state. It's kind of funky that you have to do that, and then this is like. And then these are just all widgets, and then they have this like navigator. This one is they can push a page onto. So when this push saved, which I think is when you hit this little icon, it pushes like this widget on top of the stack. There's a stack, and it pushes a page on the stack. And then when you want to go back, when you hit the back button, it's like automatically built into the widget, and when you hit this, it pops it off this navigator stack, and that's like a built-in paging mechanism. And I don't know if Android has the same thing or React Native, but that's how they do kind of like route definitions in Flutter. Yeah.
Does Dart have a concept of private fields, or is that underscore, is that just a convention?
No,
They are still
that's private.
really are.
Yeah, and it looks like TypeScript in that you have to put the type before. Well, I mean, these look like Java, but like this is a title, and then it's of new text, and this is a pair and style, and those are like, that would be the types.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, those are.
Where is the type there?
This like builder, these ones with the little colons in front of them.
Oh, I'm so used to looking at JSON. I thought those were just properties.
No, that's like, That's like the types.
Type.
Yeah, it's kind of funky. So this is like it returns a scaffold, and this is an app bar, right? It's an app bar type, and these are auto-populated, but you can actually go in here and like.
So types can have names that start lowercase?
I haven't gone through the Dart documentation that much.
And I mentioned I've been playing with it a little bit myself, and I never did like Objective-C, right? Which I know for it, that is the name parameters, right? That's a big deal with those languages, and that's really what that is. Dart has the named parameters. That's what you're seeing, like
Yeah.
our code. It's named, named parameters. They use that all over the place. Yeah. Component stuff.
And I don't know the API to like change a bunch of stuff in here because like the auto complete doesn't work that well yet. But yeah, I mean you can see like they're doing stuff. They put padding in here. This is all everything is a widget, like all of the layout, and then it kind of looks like JavaScript, but it's not. So this is like this is the basic one. I can show you. They even have a more basic one if I do. Let me see if I still have it.
It seems more similar to Java than JavaScript.
No. So I don't know if I have the super basic one. So I'll just keep going and then maybe I can come back to it. So that's a very basic app, and that does not talk to the subsystem. That app, everything is on the front end, right? And they have like you can do asynchronous calls, but they don't use the subsystem. They use like the Flutter, like Flutter's like Dart asynchronous library goes out and gets you the data. Versus if you open a Java class and you open up a socket or a channel or something. So the way that they handle, I'll show you. So that's like you could do that. You could write that just in Visual Studio Code. And the way this package works, the way they do cross-platform is they have this like Flutter app that sits on top of both an iOS, right now an iOS and an Android app. And so I'll show you in the package, there's a folder for both. And you can compile, if it's just Flutter on the front end and you just write one app, all the demos that they have are all like, oh, look, it's a little scroll list or, you know, whatever. It's always a to-do list is the kind of generic. You don't need to touch either of these. But if you want to talk to any of the subsystem APIs, you have to implement one of these classes, right? So if you're writing a cross-platform app, you have to write similar code in iOS and Android. And they have a demo that's like get the battery level, and they show you, and you can write, it's normal iOS, I think it uses Xcode to compile the iOS stuff, and then the Android stuff gets compiled with Gradle. So you can write Kotlin or Java or Swift or Objective-C. I think it's your choice. And to talk to the subsystem, you have to open up method channels. You have to open up channels. It's kind of, it's kind of weird. So I have an app that does open up channels, and I'll try to show it to you. Yeah, this one's fine. So, see, there's an iOS folder, and there's an Android folder, and then this lib is the main.dart. That's the main, like, this is the actual Dart app. And then under the hood, I had to go in and write. You have to go like in Android, and you got to go in source, right? And then you got to make. I think I'm writing Kotlin, right? So then I made I made some files in here. So I'll try to go through kind of what this looks like from the Dart side, and let me relaunch my compiler.
So while that's compiling, so if you are writing to the subsystem, does that mean that or if you're accessing a subsystem, does that mean within version control you now have to commit the iOS and Android, or
So I'll caveat, I'll say this, and now I guess, okay, so the problem is that they just updated it, and supposedly this has changed. I think you can just, in source control, you can just put the whole thing in there, right? But then like in IntelliJ, you're going to open up your Dart app, and Java's sitting under the hood. And so I was writing this app, and it was just supposed to pull the current sound level of the microphone. I was trying to read decibel levels. It's real kind of ghetto looking. But to debug that 2 months ago, I had to open up IntelliJ and Android Studio and start a Flutter debugger session, and that would only debug the front end, like the touch taps, and then I had to open up another debugger, and then when it got into the subsystem, then I could get a hook there, but I couldn't get it all in one thing. And then now they supposedly fixed that, but I didn't have time to walk into it. It does some kind of like, it starts like a remote process, and then it opens up a Java remote process debugger like in the background to kind of give you an all-in-one solution. But as of like 2 months ago, it was real. You had to like debug the Java code, and then debug the Dart code, and then try to debug it together. It was real kind of janky. So I'll go through. So this kind of, let me see if I think my app's still building. Yeah. This is like the basic Flutter app, and it has a stateful widget, and this is the thing that's important, is that we have this, we're making a constant static, it's called a method channel, and this is the method we're going to call. So you can name it, you can name the channel whatever you want, just like if you open up a socket in socket.io, you kind of give it like a tag, and this samples.flutter.io gets passed to the, whatever the string is gets passed to the back end. And then we have like some starting state, and then you have, it's like a Java, this is Kotlin, so this is a Java future, and then you like you try to go to the back, you try to invoke this method, and you say, okay, wait for this method to get invoked that's called get battery level, and then if I return it, set the state, and if I can't get it, then fail, right? And I have a couple of these, and one of them gets like the decibel level, and I had to check permissions, because you have to check permissions to get audio on the phone. A user actually has to ask for permissions. So for this one, you have to like get granted permissions or denied, and then you can set state. And then I had like I actually recorded it. It doesn't work on the VM, but if you were listening, you would see the level go up and down.
So is this straight Kotlin right here that we're looking at?
This is Kotlin. It looks kind of.
File with the .dart extension.
This is. Oh no, I'm sorry. This is Dart. Yeah, this is Dart.
I guess the question is like what you're writing here for Android. If you wouldn't try to write the same thing, common thing for iOS, would we want to be different, or is it supposed to be?
So, the thing is, you're supposed to like. This is going to be like platform independent, right? So I'm going to call this same method toggle recording, and then whatever phone it's been compiled for, that's the string it's going to send to the back end. And then on the back end, you have to handle that. When you see that come in on the channel, you say, oh, they want to toggle it, and then I need to handle that however I would handle that in Swift, right? Yeah. So this is like pretty straightforward. Let's see if this compiled. Where's my app? Let's see. Like, I don't know if it. Oh, here we go. So I had this like, I think I already granted myself permissions. I just grant it, and then I can like toggle recording or not recording. Doesn't really do anything. And then it was supposed to get the decibel level because of the VM. It doesn't actually. It just says 0%. Yes, this was super basic. I was trying to figure out how to use method channels. So I'll show you what it looks like. So yeah, so this is Kotlin, and you make this you make a main class, right? You make a class, and this is the one they already have pre-filled, right? It's called Flutter Activity. And then I have these channel names, and then I have this on create. So this is like when the channel actually gets created, and it registers itself. And some of this was like default, right? This method channel, Flutter view channel, and then you could see if call method equals get battery level. So that's a string that I'm passing from that. I'm not using that one, but toggle recording, and then it says it'll try to call toggle recording in this class, and then if it's results, it returns the status up the chain, and if not, it returns an error up the stack. And I have another one like call amplitude, and then I guess this is just like how you would do stuff in Android. I'd never really used the API before, so in this one, I have to make like a media recorder. I have to check the audio sources. I have to try to get the stuff right, and I throw an exception if it fails. And I think I have this get amplitude kind of returns the same thing. So, yeah.
So I know there's these plugins that are Flutter offers.
Yep.
And so really what you're showing is kind of like this advanced level, right? If I didn't find a plugin that did the sound recording, you're doing this deeper level where you're showing that you can do anything you want with Flutter, right?
Yep.
If you're willing to go to the extent that you did, but you don't normally have to do this anyway.
Yeah, and I hadn't looked at it too much. You can write your own plugins, and I think they can include just Flutter code. They can include a combination of code. I'll see if I can bring up I think it's like, let's see if.
What I've seen, the plugins often are kind of a way to access these native features like you're doing.
They have like
There's a sound plugin that looks like it would do some of what you've done.
yeah, I don't know where they have like a thing on the website that's like a big, you just search it like npm. The problem that I came across is that some of they're like locked to the Android version, and they're written for older versions of Flutter, and then they didn't work, and then I kind of wanted to learn how to do it myself. So there was some issues there, but there are plugins for stuff.
I assume they don't have the console like Docker code where they vet certain plugins.
I don't know because I haven't tried to publish one.
That could be your next step then, since you just wrote it. You
It's pub.darklang.org.
Oh, let's see. Yeah, pub.
Darklang.org.
Yeah. Okay. So they have like these. Yeah, and you can search in here for all these packages that people have published. Like Cloud, Firestore has a package, and I think they tell you. Yeah. I don't know. I think this has changed a lot in like the last 3 months. Like I looked at it in December when 1.0 came out, and when I wrote all this stuff, and then it's been updated like 10 times since then, right? So, yeah. And supposedly they have stuff for the web now too. I think if I come in here and if I launch, I was trying to show this other terminal. I don't know where it's at. might not have the plugin, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. It disappeared. Yeah. So I think that's. Does anybody else have any questions?
So,
Think-
in the import statements up at the top,
Yeah.
it says package colon. I'm assuming that like you could break out your files and then include them back in just without putting package, or is there?
I don't know. This pulls from these, like that's a Dart package, and then that comes from that pub Flutter repo. So you could like put that in there, and then as the build process it goes in, it's gonna automatically go get the packages just like Java or any other language would.
So do you end up with just like a gigantic file and every time, or do you like are you able to like?
I
break
think
out and compose it?
I think you can split out Dart. I just haven't done that. And some of these have Android code in the background, and I don't really know. You know, Android normally you get a jar or an APK library that you would include separately, and like I don't know how that works if you have a plugin that has two pieces. I hadn't tried to use any like that because I was having problems with them.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But the documentation's pretty updated. Like it's changed since the last time I looked at it. It looks like they're.
Do you know if they have like I mean, I guess you said they just came out with 1.0. Do they have like a roadmap on the stuff they're working on? And
Not that I saw on the website, and I'd show you. They, like, you can kind of see the state of it, right? Is that they have this beautiful website, right? And they're like, oh, Flutter's where it's at. And then when you go look at the showcase, there's like not really. They say like Hamilton made an app, but I think you can go look at them. You're like, oh, let me go explore what they are, and all of them are pretty, like, you know, you don't really know. I think a lot of them are like really basic, right? Like these are like, it just looks like a material design demo page, right? Like a lot of them are like that. So I don't really know if anybody's actually building anything like for real in development. I don't really think so.
okay.
Yeah.
I went to a presentation at San Luis Dev Fest a couple months ago, and the guy from the New York Times did a
I saw, yeah.
where he was basically presenting like their like prototyping for games and stuff using Dart.
Yeah.
Do you think Google intends to have Flutter and Dart to be proprietary products?
It's open source,
It is
I
open
think.
source?
But they control the Dart language just like they do Go, right? Even though it is tech. I actually don't know what I don't know how those are licensed, but they control the roadmap. Yeah, and then, you know, their big one was like this push for Fuchsia, but nobody knows what's happening with Fuchsia, whether it's actually going to come out, what the roadmap is like. You know, maybe you're all ended up going to write apps in Swift, and so then it's kind of a non-starter. You could just write the same app for iOS and Android natively. And so the fact that that's kind of like, there's so many unknowns, they don't even have a release date for it or any type of roadmap or what devices it's going to be on. You could like write a bunch of Flutter apps and they could go nowhere, just like some of their other projects. So I would be, yeah, that's what I would be scared of, I think.
So as far as like the JavaScript we can output from Flutter, is that specifically for the web?
So that's for, I have not used that tool. So it is actually, it's called Dart2.js, and it's part of I think it's on the Dart lang page, right? It's like Dart lang. And
I looked into that a little bit, and there's kind of a legacy of that ties back to Dart having been used with Angular. So at this point, that's a little bit old. The new thing, have you heard of the Hummingbird project? That's where they're truly trying to get Flutter to just directly be able to run in the browser. And there's even another project, have you seen the Flutter desktop? So that's a little like Electron or whatever, right? Where you can run your Flutter app as a
I saw the web one. They're like, yeah, it's coming to the web, and it's like, oh, last time you guys tried to push Dart on the web, it didn't go anywhere. Because TypeScript's pretty. I mean, you need a lot of tools now as a web developer, but it's kind of stabilized. And this was back when, IE wasn't even there was a lot of problems like in 2009, 08 when they were working on this stuff, and there wasn't kind of like a TC roadmap, and ECMAScript 5 wasn't even, I don't even remember when that came out, but none of the modern stuff that we know existed in probably when they first started working on Dart, and I thought it died. Like, I don't know anybody that, there's been like whispers about it, and then all of a sudden it came back. And this company, Flutter, I don't even think is their original project. They acquired a kind of like Xamarin, like it was a third-party company that was working on it, and they took them under their wing. Yeah, so I don't actually know. Yeah.
Is Flutter more performant than React Native?
Supposedly, but the benchmarks that are out, everybody's like, it takes the same time to render, right? It's not any faster, and that might just be because it's still running on top of Android, and maybe when it goes to Fuchsia and it actually has like, I don't know if Flutter now it will support like the Metal, or whatever is Vulkan, but I don't think when you make a Flutter app now to actually use Vulkan because it's like a subsystem thing, because it's not an Android. They're just like, oh, it's there. If it was there, it would be really fast, but it's not. There's a lot of kind of like promises and ifs, and like it's so cool, just wait. Yeah. So.
And I just mentioned it's really interesting to hear your thoughts on this, because I'm in a weird situation where for a long time I wanted to do React Native, and just in the last couple months I've gotten to do React Native. I'm on a React Native project at work, and it's weird that actually I wound up in some ways a tiny bit disappointed, and I realized React Native does have some rough edges. Like your navigation API you showed there. On React Native, that was, and even now, it's a third-party open source thing. It's not from Facebook, and there's been a lot of back and forth, and different projects trying to become the standard navigation library for React Native, and there's rough edges around a lot of those things. And when I played with Flutter, to be honest, for me, I was surprised that, it starts so fast. I do think it starts faster in general than React Native apps, because the binary that builds is tiny, and it just starts, just like a true native app. So it's interesting to me. I'm really interested in seeing what happens, maybe
Yeah.
2 years from now. Because of course they're re-architecting React Native to avoid that bridge thing that everybody says slows it down. So, a year from now, maybe they will be
Yeah.
completely comparable.
And the VM's not a very good. This is a pretty fast machine, but that Android VM is like always super slow. Like if I was plugged in to my phone, it would build in like 2 seconds, and you would see the hot reload before you even like hit. You hit enter and you look back at the phone and it's already reload. Just kind of like you expect, and it like will maintain your state across reloads. So if you had clicked on 5 things, checkboxes, and then you hot reloaded, it knows under the hood like what that state was, and as long as you didn't mess with that, you can keep messing with that state.
I ran into a similar.
No.
I ran into.
Garen, I've got about 3 weeks of React Native experience, and I've been pretty happy with it so far. I wonder if the startup time you're seeing is more about how long it takes to rebuild the app after you make a code change versus once the app is built to actually launch it on the phone. I'm not sure where the dividing line is there, but I can say that once the app is up and running, it seems very responsive. Like I have this demo where I drag a slider left and right, and then there's an SVN
Yeah, I think I went to talk at Strange Loop, and there was an engineer that it was a developer on the Dart like the Dart compiler, like that's what he worked on. And I think that's maybe like the only benefit is why they went with it is because they own it, so they can do whatever they want. There's no like, oh, you can't do this because Java 12 doesn't want that, or you have to build some kind of like hijinky kind of workaround where they're like, oh yeah, we didn't like the way Dart works, so we just changed under the subsystem. We just ripped out all this stuff and rewrote it because we can do that, right? We don't have there's a kind of no baggage with it from like, but yeah, it sucks that you have to like learn yet another language that's kind of like JavaScript, but not.
From what research I've done, a lot of it just came out of like some Google stuff. So they used Dart and Google provided it instead of making some of the tools were originally like pulled from different areas.
Yeah.
It's
So.
also how Angular started, and eventually they split it off because not everyone loves Dart, so they could split this off too. But it looks like, so I've got their system overview up, but you had a snapshot of that up in your presentation too. But they built a lot of the frameworks, so it says their widgets, rendering, animation painting, that's all on the Dart side, so it doesn't sound like it's an easy swap. Probably why they don't have both right now.
Yeah, and I can't figure out how to get the tool up in IntelliJ. Like, I just updated Flutter yesterday, but they have one where like it launches a web browser and it shows you the entire tree. And I mean, it's deep. You put like one widget in there and you'll see like 50 nodes. I mean, it's rendering a huge tree under the hood. And I think they're doing some stuff to kind of make that performant, right? They're doing some stuff on their side, but it's a really big component tree. It's really deep.
They got this whole post on how they design the component tree and do all the stuff for you, and then the ergonomics on how it was a big post, so I
Yeah.
didn't catch any of it, but it seems like there's something good about it.
Yeah.
Can I ask, does anybody, I find all this really interesting, and like I say, a year or two from now, I'm wondering, well, if the React Native has been the big winner and Flutter's died off, or will Flutter, and for me, the big question in my mind that I don't know is PWAs, and have people been looking at that? To me, that's the other big question mark, does that end up being the big winner a year or two from now?
Yeah, we've been looking into progressive web apps at work for for a project that we're hopefully gonna get approval to build pretty soon. And if we found that we will be applying a lot of the concepts that make up the PWA, it's really weird in the sense that like a progressive web app is kind of a combination of a bunch of different concepts versus like an actual thing that you're building. So like we're going to be applying a lot of those concepts, and we'll be doing some of the really like progressive web app stuff like tying into notifications and stuff. But one of the hurdles we ran into is that the client specifically wanted badges on the icon, native notifications, stuff like that. And if I remember correctly, it's one of the other devs did the research. We can't do badges on the icon for iOS, and then there's an issue with the native notification system for Android. So it kind of made everything screwy.
Yeah.
The underlying concepts, like for performance, for like having like a native launcher on the desktop is removing a lot of the browser, the extra browser tools and stuff like that is very promising.
And it was offline first kind of thing? It can work offline?
Yeah.
The plan was to build it offline first. We were going to do it with Vue using Nux to do the server-side rendering, and then building like Vue and Vuex on the front end for all the state management and application based stuff. And if I ever build it, I'll do a presentation on it.
So I guess about 6 months ago, I was looking into PWAs pretty heavily, and as you said, it's a bunch of different things. It's not just one feature. The part about caching and whether you go to the network first, and if it's not there, then you use local, or you use local, and sometimes all
Yeah.
Yeah, the testing that I did was from Android, and whenever I was looking into progressive web apps, like other sites that build progressive web apps, it shows like here examples, like I was able to add almost immediately, but I think the dev who's doing iOS research had issues with it. Yeah, something that it'd be great if they figured out.
Yeah, and those are great if as long as you don't need to talk to the subsystem, right? Like
Yeah.
you're gonna have to go native, which is why I was looking at this. Like you want to talk to the audio recorder, you want to talk to the camera, you want to talk to any of the chips, you want to talk to the Bluetooth chip. Like you have to write native backend code, or you can't.
Is that just the case in iOS though?
For
On Android phone, aren't they more open to letting you do that?
well, you have to ask permission, and all the permissions, at least from what I could find, were like you have to do it in Android, and they were all native Java calls to get subsystem stuff. But I never used an Android API before, and it's crusty. It's like there's no documentation. They return like real weird stuff. Like they were like returning enums, but they didn't tell you what they were. Like I mean, it's just really. I think because it's been out so long, they got stuff like built on top of, and they need old versions to be supported. I mean, it was really tough to like find what I needed to do in the subsystem.
That's the biggest reason why I'm interested in things like Flutter and React Native, is that I don't want to learn Swift, and I don't want to write Java or Kotlin and learn those native APIs. So if there's a plugin that does it for me, that's great.
Yeah.
And over time, there's more and more of those things, and so maybe you'll get to a point where 90% of the applications I wish I could write can be done just with the plugins, and then I just won't write the other 10% of the apps.
Yeah.
Because I'm not interested in writing that kind of code.
I was hoping for the same thing with native scripts, and like I've been so back end lately that I haven't been able to get back to try it out. But my goal with native scripts was like I don't want to touch Java, I don't want to touch I don't want to do any of that. I want one code base and like to handle it. So
Yeah.
which is awesome.
So I will say I don't know if it's changed. So there's a lot of plugins out there, and some of them are not good. I've looked at a few, but there are like a large number of them are written by the actual devs at Google. So like they wrote the Cupertino plugin, so their theming is already done for Cupertino, and they had some other ones like some network request ones for like Bluetooth, where they in Flutter there's a repo that's like the plugins that they wrote that you can include, choose not to include. So it's nice to know that they implement it. It's not like some dude's GitHub and it's maybe going to break in 2 versions, right? That there's actual engineering team like working on that stuff, which you would hope to be the case, so you don't have to do it yourself. And I'm sure that'll get better. Like I said, V1 is like 4 months ago.
So in my 3 weeks of experience with React Native, it seems to me the closest thing to that in that environment is to use something called Expo, which is kind of a layer on top of React Native, and it has a bunch of libraries so that you don't have to write the native code. And a really good example is that they have this one that's called local authorization, and it implements Touch ID and Face ID. And it's really easy to use. It's just a couple of lines of code, and I tried it out, and sure enough, Touch ID was working on a real device.
Yeah.
There was one thing you reminded me of, was your method channels thing. Have you seen that Flutter view thing? I mean, in a sense, it's almost the reverse, right? With that, it's like if you're somebody who already has, say, an Android app, you can do like one screen of your app in Flutter, and you present it in Flutter view.
Oh.
I don't remember what they call it for iOS, but my understanding is they support it for iOS as well. So it's just kind of interesting, yeah, if you had a legacy app that you could mix in a little Flutter incrementally.
Yeah, I don't think I saw that, and I did see some other talk too that I use method channels because that's what they have in their documentation. Like, here, we'll help you talk to the subsystem. But they're like, if you're a really good Android engineer, there's other ways to talk to the subsystem. And they're like, oh, but we're not going to mention them here on this page. But I guess there's potentially other ways to call native backend code. Like you're opening up some kind of like system level channel that isn't not the same as the method channel. But they didn't really go into that, and I didn't have time to dig into the underpinnings of Android to find those and see if they worked. But they do mention that in the documentation that there's other ways. You don't have to use method channels. What those are, I don't know. I think there's some sockets. You can open up a socket. I think I saw some code for that. Whether it's finalized or not is a different story. Yeah. But I think it's worth checking out. I would just suggest, let's see if I have my last slide. Yeah, so that's basically my thought. I mean, it looks pretty cool. The community's really small. Debugging system level was like a really pain in the butt. And not sure if it's going to be around like some other Google projects. 2 years from now, it could be dead. And then just, the docs are really good. I haven't looked at the Dartlang docs in a long time, but I guess they're supposed to be pretty good. The Flutter docs get updated all the time, or just go search on Stack Overflow. Yeah, I think the best way if you...
Somebody shared on Stack Work the number of Google failures that goes for pages of different products like Google Glasses that didn't work out.
Yeah.
But
In the initial Google presentation of this, what I remember them saying was that Google AdWords is an app that is used, a mobile app that's used to manage, I've never done it, but apparently if you're somebody who does those ads with Google AdWords, and the app for AdWords is written in Flutter.
Flutter.
And what they said was even though people aren't real familiar with that, they said really that's a big moneymaker for Google. And that their claim was that they will be behind this because they wouldn't have used it for AdWords unless it was good and they were committed to it. That's what they claim, whether they follow through on it.
Yeah.
That's what they
Well, there's a quote for Fuchsia on the Wikipedia, and he's like, "This is not a garbage dump of just engineers who just get put on this project to not work on anything." Basically, like they're very adamant that it's not just a dumping ground for just whatever weird side projects, that it's actually going to come out. Yeah. So, yeah. Cool. Well, that's
Great.
it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. Please eat food. This food is awkward to carry, so if it is gone by the end of the night, that would be great.